Hi guys, Karen Miller from Sleep at Last. Welcome to another one of my videos. All the links to my social media channels and the link to my free nap guide for babies 4 to 12 months is in the description below, so be sure to check that out. So this video is talking about how do you put your baby down drowsy but awake? And the answer to that question is quite simple. You don't. So this is something that gets battered around a lot on the internet. I am in a lot of different groups and forums, and I hear people asking all the time, and I get asked all the time, how do I put my baby down drowsy but awake? It's quite an old-fashioned saying and idea that you can actually put them down drowsy but awake, but it's something that I never use with my clients. It's something that I would never advise anybody to do, and the reason for that is because the entire definition of drowsy is in itself open for interpretation. Like, everyone's going to have a different idea of what drowsy is, and different babies will have a different way of being drowsy or looking drowsy, and so it just ends up leading to lots of confusion and frustration for you as a parent when you pop them down and then they jolt awake and you think, well, it hasn't worked, or you end up holding them until they're in a deep sleep, and you didn't really want to do that. So what happens is, if you're trying to do the drowsy but awake thing, more often than not, they are just asleep when you put them down, and so what you're then doing is assisting to sleep, and they're going to look for that when they wake up every sleep cycle, which is 40 minutes during the day and every 2 hours at night. And if you are dealing with those kind of level of wake ups in the night, and the cat naps during the day, please go and check out my other videos that I've done. I've got a video that talks about why your baby is waking every 2 hours a night. I've got videos about cat naps, so go and check out my other videos to learn more about that and what you can do to resolve that. But yes, it's not something that I recommend anybody does. If you are doing the drowsy but awake thing at the moment, or you think you are, like I say, you're probably just putting them to sleep. And my advice is to put them down awake. And by that I mean wide awake. And I know that puts the fear of God in a lot of parents, because they just think, well, I can't do that because the child's going to scream, and I've never done that before, and they're not used to that, and I don't know what they're going to do, and it causes a lot of anxiety. But ultimately, you want your baby to be able to see that they are being put down in their beds, be able to see that you're still there, and they haven't been abandoned or anything, be able to see their room and their environment, their surroundings, become used to going to sleep within that environment. And to do that, you really do need for them to be awake. And if they are able to fall asleep in their own beds from awake, from wide awake, then they are more likely to try and do that for themselves when they wake up during the night. And essentially what you will end up doing then is teaching them to self-settle themselves, which is what you want, to encourage less wake-ups during the night and to encourage longer naps as well, because we do all wake up after one sleep cycle, and you want them to be able to link those sleep cycles without you. And if you're doing the whole drowsy but awake thing, what will end up happening is that they will just look for you at every sleep cycle, and you'll just be assisting them to sleep all the time. Now, of course, if you've got a newborn, that's different, because newborns cannot self-settle until they're 16 weeks. So, you know, you might be able to do a bit of the drowsy but awake, but again, newborns are really sleepy and they tend to just fall asleep after feeding anyway. And if you do need to assist a newborn, it's best to do a bit of patting, back rubbing, but whilst they are still in their beds, so that kind of thing. If you are feeding to sleep at the moment, and that's why you're trying to move towards drowsy but asleep, so you're trying to move away from feeding to them just feeding until they're drowsy, that potentially is possible, although again, it's going to be quite tricky for you to know when they are finished feeding and they're just starting to sleep now. It's a very fine line. It can be very quick that actually happens. It's very unlikely that you're going to catch that before they do fall asleep. So what I advise, if you are feeding to sleep, is to just stop feeding to sleep, or stop feeding at the time that you know that they're going to fall asleep, and bring the feed earlier by like 30-20 minutes, and give the feed in a noisy, loud, bright environment to increase your chances of them staying awake after the feed, rather than trying to guess if they've finished feeding and now they're just comfort sucking and if they're drowsy or not. It is possible to rouse babies sometimes before you put them down, and they may open their eyes, but again, it's very difficult to know if they're just reactively opening their eyes and not actually awake or aware of what's going on, and therefore weren't really fully aware of the transition from breast or from holding to down in the bed. So to avoid all confusion and all frustration, my advice is to avoid the drowsy but awake thing altogether and just put them down awake. Use a settling method that you are comfortable with while they are awake, because obviously they will protest if they are used to being put down to sleep, and be consistent with that for a couple of weeks in order to teach them to sleep by themselves, sleep independently. I hope you found that useful, guys. If you've got any questions about this, please pop them in the comments, and like I mentioned, please check out the links below for my freebies. Thank you for listening.